There are now 3 main games in the Witcher trilogy. As you're probably all familiar, there's The Witcher 1, 2, and 3. But popularity aside, what is the best Witcher game? A large majority of the fanbase have not even dabbled in Witcher 1 and 2, so I thought making this video would be a little informative for those of you who have only played The Witcher 3 and maybe wish to play the other games at some point but haven't quite dipped their toes in the water yet. I already have a review on The Witcher 1 if you'd like to go and watch that. I haven't made anything of the sort on The Witcher 2. So today I'm going to try my best to give a full comprehensive analysis of each game and which one is the best. Hopefully then we'll have more people going back to the other games as they are hidden gems. The way I'm going to be tiering each game is the exact same as the video I made a while ago, that being what is the better DLC out of Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine. Before we get into the video, I'd like to ask you guys to subscribe and potentially join our Witcher Discord server. The link for that will be in the description and I hope to see you guys there. But without further ado, let's talk about which Witcher game is the best. Starting off with the classic here, The Witcher 1 is both loved and heavily criticized. With the game being almost 18 years old now, it's bound to be kind of rough. Fair warning, there are going to be pretty major spoilers for both the games and the books of The Witcher. The categories we will be using for this are story, characters, gameplay, and soundtrack and atmosphere. The story in The Witcher 1 is actually pretty decent. The story follows an amnesia-ridden Geralt post-fatal wound in Rivia. As to how Geralt survived his final altercation in the books is a totally different can of worms that we could possibly delve into in a different video. Throughout the story, you track down the leaders of the Salamandra group, the Professor and Azarhavid. Some of you may have actually heard of the name the Professor from the headpiece you can get in The Witcher 3, the Professor's glasses, and yes, he does wear them in The Witcher 1. The story does have a few unique plot twists, and it has a pretty interesting plot overall, but I won't go into the plot twists and the niches as they could be different videos on their own. Also, I think that's too spoilery. I wouldn't say the story completely and utterly blows you out of the water, but it is definitely good. Considering I gave the story for Blood and Wine an 8, I'm going to give the story for The Witcher 1 a 7.5 out of 10. The characters in The Witcher 1 are truly something special also. I think this is one of its best elements. One such character is Kalkstein, who is in The Witcher 1, he's an alchemist and he's heavily involved in the story. Very notable characters such as Triss Merigold also appear in later acts. My personal favorites include Talar and Berengar. Berengar is absolutely awesome. Berengar is a witcher, and throughout the story he is ambushed by Salamandra and has a few run-ins with them here and there. This creates a very cool and interesting dynamic when he does meet with Geralt eventually, and Geralt confronts him about his collusion with the group. Berengar is a pretty complex character. Depending on your choices, he kinda doesn't get all of the development that I think that he needs to get for you to truly appreciate him as a character, so all I'll say is give him a little bit of slack. But the characters in The Witcher 1 are pretty phenomenal all round, so I'm gonna give it an 8.5 out of 10. Moving on now to the gameplay of The Witcher 1, and wow, do we have a lot to talk about. To talk about the actual physical gameplay, how the game feels, I think it's best that you guys go and watch my Witcher 1 playthrough. I think this is the best way to gain the best insight on how the game actually plays. Not speaking about the gameplay, which by the way is a solid 3 out of 10, let's speak about the quests and the progression. That is all encompassed in gameplay as well as the combat and such. The quests in The Witcher 1 are actually pretty good, and I do think that some of them are better than the later installments quests. My personal favorites are Berengar's Secret, of course I like Berengar a lot, and Ripples, which is where you go and fight Dagon with the Lady of the Lake's behest. The progression is nothing insane, it's nothing innovative or new, but then again this is a very old game, a game that I did not play when it came out, so I don't know if it was new for the time. But overall, I'm going to give this category a 7 out of 10, as it's heavily weighed down by the combat. Moving on to soundtrack and atmosphere for The Witcher 1. I think soundtrack and atmosphere is pretty important for each game. This is heavily what makes or breaks the immersion for the game. I think The Witcher 1 has the best atmosphere hands down out of all 3 Witcher games. I also think The Witcher 1 does the Witcher theme the best from the books into the games. The music is pretty awesome, and I've been playing it throughout this segment, so let me know if you guys like it in the comments below. From the gloomy swamps to the temple quarters to the quarantine zone and the outskirts, you actually really can't go wrong with the areas in The Witcher 1, though traveling around these areas is pretty hard considering there's no means of travel other than walking. They are all very fantastical and very Witcher-esque, so I'm giving this a 9 out of 10. As for the next installment of the Witcher franchise, we have The Witcher 2. The Witcher 2 is a 14-year-old game, and there is a 4-year difference between all 3 of these games. Little fun fact for you, I think they're going to try to do the same thing with The Witcher 4, 5, and 6 as well, or whatever they're going to call them. It's a pretty consistent timeline, and boy, what a jump it was from The Witcher 1 to The Witcher 2. So, let's talk about it. The events of The Witcher 2 occur essentially straight after The Witcher 1. The story follows Geralt tracking the assassin of King Foltest. We all know this assassin to be Letho, who actually killed multiple kings, including King Demoven III. I think the dynamic between the Scoia'tael, Letho, and Geralt is very interesting. I don't think it quite makes it to my personal favorite of stories like Hearts of Stones, which I have at around a 9, but I will give The Witcher 2 a very modest 8 out of 10. Moving on very swiftly to the characters in The Witcher 2 are also pretty great. We see Roach appear, Triss, Letho, and Yorvith. Everyone has their own opinions on these characters, but I quite enjoy a lot of them, especially Yorvith. I find him quite dynamic. I think it's hard to argue against them being very well written, and I do like siding with both Roach and Yorvith in the story. story. There isn't too much to say about characters without fully going into the very nitty gritty of it, so I'm just going to give the characters a solid 7.5 out of 10 for The Witcher 2, as I don't think the characters are nearly as enjoyable as the ones in The Witcher 1, or as we'll see later with The Witcher 3. Moving on to the gameplay. The gameplay is a real nice step up from The Witcher 1, but it still suffers from a few things. I definitely think the combat and general gameplay experience is smoother and a lot more well made than The Witcher 1. However, with this being said, it's still very far from greatness. As for quests, it's alright I suppose. I must say that my favourite quest, although it's perhaps quite generic, is a sack full of fluff. I really appreciated the comedy relief of this quest. I couldn't really find myself invested in many quests in The Witcher 2, but the progression is just as good as any other Witcher game. Maybe I'm missing something about the quests or the immersion of The Witcher 2, but I could never really invest myself in it. I'm going to give this category a 6.5 out of 10, the lowest category so far. Finally, moving through, we're going to talk about the soundtrack and atmosphere of The Witcher 2. Something I found The Witcher 2 did incredibly well was actually its atmosphere. My favourite area is probably Vergen. There's something about it that's very fantastical, and maybe I'm crazy, but it kinda reminds me of Markarth a bit, without the dwarven metal everywhere, of course. But that's about all for The Witcher 2, and I'll give soundtrack and atmosphere for The Witcher 2 a 7 out of 10, a very modest rating. And finally, we have The Witcher 3, the one that blew up and got Game of the Year in 2015. I'm not going to include DLCs in this, as I already have a video for that, as I mentioned earlier. The Witcher 3 is an absolute behemoth of a game. However, do not expect an easy victory for The Witcher 3, as The Witcher 3 bears its own flaws. The Witcher 3 story follows Geralt looking for Yen. When Geralt finds Yen, Yen informs him that Ciri is back, and she's on the run from the Wild Hunt. They split up, Geralt to Velen, Yen to Skellige, in pursuit of a lead on Ciri. Base jumper running from the Wild Hunt isn't so easy to track, even for our infamous tracker. Tripping over stones in the investigation, leading to dead ends, until you finally reunite with Ciri in the end. It really pulls on your heartstrings, and I think it's one of the best emotional stories I've ever played and/or read. I'm gonna give the base story of The Witcher 3 an 8.5 out of 10. Moving on to the characters for The Witcher 3, there's no drought of dynamic in characters whatsoever. We finally get to see Yen for the first time in the whole series, and she's there for most of the game. We see Triss, Kira Metz, Shani, the Wild Hunt, Ciri, Vesemir, and the list goes on and on. It genuinely is a dream come true for Witcher fans. It's like a grab bag of all the most iconic characters, bar a few. You can't really get better character inclusion or development in any other Witcher game. I'm giving the character and the character pool a 9 out of 10 hands down, and that's without DLC. Now for the gameplay of The Witcher 3. My main and really only tripe with The Witcher 3 is the combat. I do find the combat to be a little lackluster, but it does suffice, and I do actually enjoy it most of the time. On launch, The Witcher 3 was a whole lot worse than it is now, which is pretty commendable that they cleaned up their act, much like they did with Cyberpunk. The combat can feel slightly clunky at times, and there isn't much diversity in how you can play. At least, not in comparison to other games, that is. But then again, this was a 2015 release, so you can't expect it to reach 2025's standards. As for quests, I personally think The Witcher 3 has some of the best peaks and some of the lowest lows. Due to the sheer amount of quests, there are bound to be a few stinkers, but obviously there's a few goated quests in amongst that pool too. Not that they're horrendous, more so repetitive or boring most of the time. However, the highs are amazing, such as The Last Wish, the quest itself in reference to the books, which is an emotional journey through history, dating all the way back to the books and tugging on your heartstrings. If you haven't played The Witcher 3, you must play it just for this reason. I assure you, it's such a great quest. I'm giving The Witcher 3 a big fat 9 out of 10 for gameplay. Okay, citizens of Rivia and Pogrom participants, put away your pitchforks and hear me out. The Witcher 1, in my opinion, has the best atmosphere, but by far, I think The Witcher 3 has the best OST. Fields of Ard-Skellig, which is sung in my language, Spike Rug, and Another Round for Everyone, that's only to name a few, are absolute masterpieces. They are among some of the best Witcher soundtracks ever, by far, which brings me to the idea of making a best Witcher soundtracks ranking. Let me know if you guys would like to see that, but I digress. Witcher 3 doesn't have the best atmosphere, better than The Witcher 2, but worse than The Witcher 1, but I firmly believe that it has the best OST. That being said, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 also. Before we conclude the video, let's very quickly recap and get our conclusion. The Witcher 3 came in with a score of 8 out of 10 overall, The Witcher 2, 7.3 out of 10, and The Witcher 3, 8.9 out of 10. Putting The Witcher 3 as the best game by almost 1 whole point. I don't know if a lot of you saw this coming. A lot of people say that The Witcher 1 is in fact better, but I disagree. This isn't actually much of a deviation when we consider the time difference between these games. Let me know if you guys would have rated anything differently and why. I did miss my weekly upload as I've been struggling with health and such recently, but I'll be back into the full swing of things as soon as possible. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and if you did, please consider liking and subscribing, as it greatly supports the channel and the dream. If this video isn't up to standard, just wait until I'm back in full health, and I promise things will be back to normal. But until then, have a great day everyone, and take care. Love.